Me really intrigued about this is that this is called the multi-game platform support with old cool game system, whatever, you know, 15 freaking dollars I've paid for this, and it seems to be it has a support for MIM games. I don't know if I can actually be used. I don't know if I can use every single game of comes with built-in games. Even the seller didn't know. They were talking about this special high capacity tapes. You know, it's not actually tape, it's just a cartridge, looking at the Game Boy Advance cartridge. But, you know, when you're looking at the box, it's very intriguing. Comes with, of course, the PlayStation 2 knockoff controllers. But, yeah, how does it work? And that is what we're going to be finding out today. So at the back we're finding some information. It says Gamebox 1000 Chinese mainland and version, and the US version seems to be the Gamebox 1001. The centimeters 90 centimeters by 16 by 4 centimeters, weight around 650 or 650 grams, and this has a dual core processor with 500 megahertz, so 128 megabyte of RAM. So the overall, like, so when you're looking at the specs, it is nothing special, and it cannot be compared with those cheap China game boxes. But let's do a quick teardown and see what we're finding in the inside. I didn't do any checking, so we're going to be doing this as we're making this video. So this is actually the game box, and yeah, this looks kind of weird. Seriously, like, it looks really weird. Having on and off switch, I think this is the reset button. I'm guessing this is touch or some kind. So we do have, I'm hoping I'm not going to be needing the game card because this wasn't included. I told the seller at the front we're having 4 USB ports, so that's interesting that we do have this option. So at the back we're finding the Gamebox model GBX 1001. So this is the US version, 6 volt, 6 watts. So the question remains, what is the power supply? The power supply is actually 100 and 240 volts. And yeah, the voltage is kind of weird. 6 volt is something you don't see very often. There is only one controller, and it's called the Game Oaks. Yeah, whatever. So this is the cheap PlayStation knockoff controllers, and oh man, the right joystick is already broken. So yeah, that is some really good quality. AV out specifications, the same shenanigans that we have seen before. Nothing of an interesting information, general specifications, stuff that I have to be chit-chatting about. But let's grab myself an old monitor, because that's what we're going to be needing with this particular system. I'm hoping there are even some built-in games, because if there are no built-in games, we don't have a cartridge, we do have a problem. So what is interesting, that this thing actually has a touch sensor on top. Turning it on, you can hear a fan in the inside. So configuration, it's kind of interesting. So let's boot it up and let's see what we're getting with the menu, because this is a system I've personally never seen. Oh, there is already some Game Boy Advance. So this thing actually plays more than it already shows. So that is interesting for a first generation of a game box. So I didn't plug in the controller. Let's do that first. What is kind of cool that we have like a 4-player configuration. So let's plug it in. Don't touch the on and off switch. So we do have a 9041 zip file, and there is all kinds of cool stuff on here. So I'm seeing some GBA, we have some MAME, we have some Neo Geo, carrier aircraft wing. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So there is already a lot of stuff built in. It's interesting. I do wonder, like, where they were selling this. Were they selling this in only in US region, China region? So where we have been a lot of Pandora's boxes, but before that time there is a lot of weird stuff on here that we can actually play. But there is this like built-in games, and on the box it doesn't state anything. But that's also interesting to have like this plug-and-play situation with a cartridge. But there is nothing of an information. It would be cool to have an extra cartridge to see what is on there. But let's start up a game and let's see what happens. Oh, okay, you don't know what just happened. Did I remove it or what? No, it just automatically goes up. That's kind of weird. So next up, let's do some Cadillac and Dinosaurs. I'm guessing need to press the A button. Now we'll start up the file itself. No signal. Okay. Oh yeah, this doesn't sound like it's supposed to be. Oh, yeah. And let's be honest, there is no manual whatsoever. So we can actually pause. Well, there is no way of going back to the main menu. Okay. We do have a turbo button. Oh man, that's really bad. So we can jump. Okay. It's more like skipping the intro, like always. But so far, where the audio isn't like it's supposed to be. The over emulation seems to be working just fine. The controller too, like the controller does play okay. And I find it so fascinating with these, like say, cheap whiz systems, finding them after many years after they have been released. But one thing is sure is that when it comes to, let's say, the overall, let's say, performance, it's not perfect. Let's press the reset button. So we're just going to be resetting the full system itself. So I just wanted to see some of these Captain MAME systems or arcade systems, but this is really bad. Yeah, I can still remember those first generation of, let's say, I think it was Dingu, like say device that we can emulate all kinds of stuff, but oh man, the emulation is really bad. So where we do have like okay performance of, let's say, the screen itself, you can just hear how it struggles with the audio. So emulation performance is quite bad on these devices, that is one thing to be sure. Oh man, those first generation things, oh, it's really awful. That is one thing to be sure. And I find it kind of interesting that we do have a pause button, but for resetting, you need to reset the full system. Oh, what a joke. So moving to some Neo Geo, because that is also possible to be played in here. I do wonder, can we find an SD card inside this machine and add more games? That would be kind of cool. Because I didn't see any, let's say, SD cards so far. So when it comes to the emulation performance, it's not bad at all. I do have this idea where the sound effects are a little bit off. But the overall performance again, when it comes to the visual part, is quite good. You have the slowdowns, but that is typical with this system. However, when it comes to emulation performance, it's not bad at all. Of course, newer generation performs so much better, but for this old beast, But I still have this idea that everything runs in turbo mode, particularly when it comes to this game, the drifting game. It sounds so, let's say, over the top, where you can just listen to the audio. But I'm not kind of surprised, because in the first, let's say, generation of game boxes, you had a lot of problems. Oh man, where I do suck already about this game. It is that speed up game makes it not easier to actually play this. But visual-wise, there is nothing to do when it comes to aspect ratio and whatsoever. So it's one of those great indications how about first generation devices. So let's reboot. Getting into the game, you can just see and actually hear that the music is so messed up. Oh, now we can see the real slowdowns. So can we actually do some moves? Wow, we can actually do some moves on the controller. I am quite surprised because the membrane underneath doesn't feel great. But the inputs of the controller are not bad at all. It feels like freaking sandpaper under your thumb, but yeah. Also, these controls have been mapped correctly. So when it comes to like the feel of this is awful, but the input is absolutely great. So I have no clue when this thing was actually made. I think for a first generation device, yeah, you can have some fun with it. Of course now it is an overflow of different boxes now, but besides that, it's unfortunate that the overall emulation is pretty bad. But mainly this is some MAME, Capcom systems, Neo Geo, that's particularly where this machine works on. And yeah, that's what we can only test out so far. Maybe this thing even has support for Game Boy Classic Advance and NES and Super NES, but there was nothing that stated. And adding games, I think we need to open it up to check it out, what you can actually do with this. Okay, so when it comes to the side, you can just actually see that there is a mini SD card. So we can use this for maybe our advantage and adding new games. So that would be interesting to slap in an SD card and see what actually happens. But let's plug it in, because I've made an SD card and I have no idea how you're actually going to be needing to set it all up. Most of them is going to be FAT32, that's going to be okay. So SD card has been implemented. and let's start it back up. Now let's see if it's going to be recognized. I've made different folders like games and put them down in a root folder and hoping that's going to be having an overview. And so far I can see it seems to be booting up. And yep, we do have the option for an SD card. So it doesn't matter where you're going to be putting them. So you can just actually see it shows in a couple of games. But the unfortunate part is the only one that's going to be recognized is the NES part. So let's boot it up then, and I'm guessing for MAME, so you need to have like special files. So it was like a little bit of a tricky situation. Let's start it up, but it doesn't recognize Super NES or Super Famicom, Mega Drive, and etc. So, and it also doesn't even boot up the NES game so far. So that's quite unfortunate. So when it comes to these older game boxes, for that kind of stuff, doesn't work at all. So yeah, that was absolutely a waste. So let's turn it off. Doesn't turn off, so we're going to be doing it like that. So the SD cards are going to be saved for the next round of, let's say, weird game boxes maybe. So let's put it in there to keep it safe. So, but that's actually when it comes to, let's say, adding games. They have this very strange cartridge slot that looks like in Game Boy Advance, but nope, you cannot play Game Boy Advance games. So I love this concept actually, to be honest, when it comes to that. So let's remove these rubber feet and let's see if we can get into the machine itself. Because I think that is it's just so interesting, but this thing doesn't fit because of the very deep holes. Let's see if I can get myself another screwdriver. The slide in there. Yep, there we go. Let's remove all 4 of them and let's do a peek in the inside, because I am so curious about this. Like, what kind of hardware spec were they actually using, and can we find any information of the production date? That is made in China. That is what the sticker says over here. So that is nothing new and nothing interesting. But when it was made and what kind of specs, because this says they were using a dual core. So what kind of chip were they actually running on? So there's no way of getting into the interface to mess around with it. So what you see is what you're getting. And I just wanted to pick it up from the convention to check here on the channel and to showcase. So we can open it up fairly easy. So you can see the touch buttons over there. Okay, so the construction wise is interesting. And let's lift it up and let's get this thing down here. So there is this metal for the cartridge slot. So this is the old famous fan that we were hearing all of the freaking time. Yeah, you can see that if you're going to be looking at this, everything looks kind of nice, to be honest. Is this something, I don't know if I can remove this piece. That would be cool to showcase what's actually on here. Oh man, the cooling element isn't even stuck on the machine itself. Oh man, they didn't even tighten up the freaking screws on the cooling element. They did put some thermal paste on there, so oh man, that's the way how it goes there. Oh, they producing something and they didn't even like screw it all the way down. So the 2, let's say, buttons are plugged in over here. And there is nothing much you can actually see. There is, I think this is the RAM chip they're using. It's a Samsung one. Okay. So the question remains, can I actually get this freaking thing loose to remove the cooler, or what's going on? Because man, oh man, it's superb quality when it comes to it. Let's put some force on there. It's also like a different screw. Let's get my different screwdriver. Man, the quality of these screws are absolutely the worst. There we go, freaking finally. And let's see what for kind of chip they're using. Okay, they're seriously using some chips over here, all Samsung. PCB, it looks kind of nice. Gamebox 201021, so I'm guessing this made in 2021? Nah, version 3.0. Let's get this freaky filth and let's put some new thermal paste on there. And let's clean everything up. It would be possible if you're looking at the fan, how beautiful everything looks. It's not bad at all. So let's clean up the thermal paste to have a quick look into the chip and replace the thermal paste with something better. So let's see, this thermal purifier. I have these nice bottles where there is some cleaning stuff. This works perfectly if you want to replace your thermal paste and get rid of your thermal paste from your fingers, like I'm having over here. Alright, so let's clean this thing up. Okay, so I can implement some new thermal paste. That would be like 10 times better than one that was on there. And let's see. Seriously? Oh man! There. Oh. Or is there some? No, there's nothing on there. Nothing at all. Jeez. Okay, so everything has been cleaned up. Let's put some Arctic cooling on here. I think this is even 10 times better overall cooling, let's say paste, but let's do a little bit of a drop in the middle. There we go. We don't need much when it comes to that. There are different methods of putting thermal paste on there. So let's clean it up, nothing on my hands. And I'm guessing I need to put it on like that. All right, so this is going to be even more of a challenge because of the weird shape of this cooling element. Yep. It needs to be like that. But you know what's kind of weird? That it's going to be also cooling the RAM modules, but there's no thermal paste in there. Okay, that's kind of weird and neat. So let's put some more thermal paste on there.